one thing that we did learn in the NFL is we learned that the trade talks are starting to heat up with one Baker Mayfield, the former
Yeah.
number one overall pick in the 2018 draft class. Jonathan Jones of CBS Sports, he's our NFL insider out there, reported that the trade talks are heating up between the Browns and the Carolina Panthers. What are you hearing around the league with this Mayfield potentially going to Carolina, which would set up quite the event in week one with the Panthers hosting the Browns there?
Well, I don't think the Panthers are trading Sam Darnold for Baker Mayfield. That's not the case. I think the Panthers feel like Sam Darnold in this offseason with Ben McAdoo, who's done a really good job of coming in and kind of building the offense around the skill set of the team. And, I think they want to see where Sam Darnold can get to. Now, a lot of people have dismissed Darnold, but I think when you go over his career, I think he's obviously got a lot to prove, and this is the dead end. This is the road. Either he does it or he doesn't. But I think they want to create competition. Scott Fitterer, the general manager of the Panthers, Matt Rule. I think they want competition. I think they want to stack as many guys as they can on top of one another at the quarterback position. So the Darnold for Mayfield rumor to me is just a bad rumor. This is a three-part trade, right? So you've got to get Baker, who's due to make $18 million. Mm-hmm. You've got the Browns to agree to what are they going to pay, or how much will they take, or will they not take, and then you've got to agree to compensation. I get the sense that they've been able to work some of those details out. I think they're probably not quite to finish the deal, but I think they're the only team. I think if Baker realizes there's only one place to go, which gives him the opportunity to compete to be a starter, and B, to build a career going forward, that Carolina might be the best place. I mean, Carolina is building this kind of culture that nobody believes us. Nobody thinks we're going to be any good. Mm-hmm. Nobody sees us. And so, they've got some good pieces there. I mean, they've got some good defensive pieces. They've got some good offensive pieces if they can keep McCaffrey healthy. So, that mentality is going to serve them well. But I think Baker's got to understand that. So I think the Browns and the Panthers probably can get a deal worked out. I think it's the other elements that need to get finished before this closes. And I will say this, I don't think Seattle's in this at all. I think Seattle truly likes Drew Lock. I think they really believe. I was told, reliably a couple of weeks ago that John Schneider, the general manager of the Seattle, really loved Drew Lock coming out of college. And so if that's true and they want to go down this road with Drew Lock, I don't see them being in the Mayfield Derby. They're not there. So who else is in it? And then you've got Garoppolo. You still have Garoppolo out there that needs a place to go, and he's got $24 million, and the 49ers need to get rid of that cap number. Now, they could cut him, but they know they'll probably, then I think Seattle might be interested in him from what I'm told. But I do think the Mayfield deal is kind of in that final stages where, there was a sign that when you left Bakersfield, California and went to Vegas, there was a restaurant there that said, "Eat here, we both starve," because there was no place else to eat going forward. I think Baker's at that sign. I think make a deal with Carolina or you're going to starve. I think that's kind of the sense that I'm getting and listening to what people are telling me. So I wouldn't be surprised if it happened in the next 5-6 days. It may take 2 weeks. I just think it will get done because I think it serves best interest for both parties.
Yeah, we always say on this show that it's all about the money. It's always about the money. Is that kind of
again
where
with
we're
the
at
money,
there?
Femi? Again with the money,
Again
Femi.
with the
Yeah,
money.
it's always about the money. I mean, it's always about the money. But I think in fairness to Baker, I think you're guaranteed to make X amount.
Yeah.
And and people are asking you to walk away from a guarantee. But you've got to. But that's not smart. And it's hard to get a player to do that, right? But you've got to be able to paint a picture of where that number can go to. And I don't think anybody's trying to screw anybody. I think certainly there's a way to make up money that you lost instead of it being guaranteed. It's just based on competition and play time. I mean, if you're Baker, what options do you have? You've got to put yourself in position to launch your career. And you got to go there. And the same thing with Sam Darnold. He's got to launch his career. I mean, you got Mayfield and Darnold if they go together in Carolina, which, if that happens, let them both figure out who's the best player, and I've often said this, Femi, fear does the work of reason. Fear does the work of reason. So when two players are fearful that their careers are at stake, you're going to get the best version of that player.
No, I think that's a great point there, especially from Sam Darnold's case as well there, where this was seen almost like the last destination for him as a NFL starter out there in Carolina. What does this do for the Panthers as a team, though? Because we've talked about the NFC South in the recent weeks here, talking about how Tampa Bay is the favorite for sure. New Orleans is a really talented team. We like their roster. But if Carolina is able to get Baker Mayfield, let's say he beats out Sam Darnold in a QB competition in training camp, what does that mean for their team? Like, how good can this team be? Could they possibly be a wild card team? Or is this kind of maybe hovering around 500?
Well, I think it gives them, look, Baker, if you said to me, who's a better player, Darnold or Mayfield, I would say Baker Mayfield's had better tape. I mean, he took a team to the playoffs 2 years ago. He was hurt last year. I mean, he's had a better career in the NFL than Sam Darnold. And they're both not perfect, but I think it's behooving of the Panthers to figure out, both of them can run this similar offense. So it's not going to be a question of, well, we got to run this for Baker, we got to run this for Sam. I mean, both of them need to be in a really good play action pass scheme, hard play action. They've got to feature McCaffrey. He's got to stay healthy. The guy's played 10 games in the last 2 years. They've got to get their best players to play well, but they have skill. DJ Moore last year, I think he was at 62% of the percentage of ratio in terms of attempts to catches, which is too low for a guy with that much talent. So it means you got to get better quarterbacking. I think it helps them defensively. When you go back and study the Panthers, they were in a lot of games last year into the third quarter. I mean, Philadelphia, they had a chance. They blow that late. New England, they turned the ball over. Sam was horrible in that game and made just really bad decisions. I mean, if they can get control of that, their defense was pretty good. They started 3-0 and then faded. They faded the last 2 years down the stretch, and I think they know that, and they got to fix that. So could they be a wild card team? Yeah. I mean, look, they're in the South. I mean, why not? We know this. There's always 14, how many teams that make the playoffs every year? Yeah. 14, we know that there's 50% of those teams don't return. So somebody's got to take that place. Why not Carolina? If they get it, based on their talent level, if they can get any quarterbacking play without turning the ball over as much as they did, they've got a chance.
If you're John Schneider, because that was the first thing that I thought of when I saw this report of Mayfield, the trade talks heating up with Carolina, I was like, man, Seattle, you mentioned they love Drew Lock. I mean, to each his own. We all have what we see. The beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I'm not a fan of Drew Lock. I think that's a road less traveled there. I'm not going to try to go down that path. But are the Seahawks just going to stink in 2022? I mean, I can't see that team being very good if Drew Lock is going to be the starter for 17 games.
I can't either. And I think there's a fine line, right? And I have great respect for John Snyder. I think John works hard. He's diligent. He does his job really well. I mean, he doesn't, we're all going to make mistakes, so we could sit here and criticize anybody. But the reality of it is to me, there's a point where if I liked a player in college and I've watched his pro tape, I've got to be honest with myself to say, you know what, I think I missed on that guy. And if I like Locke, which I wasn't in love with Locke coming out, John obviously was. I think at some point you got to say, wait a minute, this isn't good. Darnold's pro tape isn't very good. Mayfield's pro tape's better. Locke's pro tape doesn't match his college tape. And I think that's that fine line. Now, what often happens, Femi, is you get into this, which I explained about Darnold and McAdoo. Can McAdoo get Darnold to play better? I mean, he's been through a lot of coaches, and he's been through a lot of systems. Can he get him to stop making that critical mistake in a game where you say, why are you throwing the ball there? Like, what are we doing here? Like, why are we throwing the game away? And I think it's the same thing with Locke. Can they coach that out? I think it's going to be hard, but that's where they're going. Now, what happens in August after Locke goes out in the preseason or in training camp and doesn't play well? I think then you've got to readjust it. And that's probably part of what Mayfield's saying. Look, if I take this deal now, maybe Seattle's going to give me the full thing down the road, but are they? And then now you to have a great year, you can't walk into a team at the end of August and think you're going to be able to run their offense effectively. You're going to be, it's going to be too hard. You got to get in there now.
Thanks for watching the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi. And for more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to VSiN Live and the GM Shuffle podcast with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN, wherever you get your podcasts.